So yeah, like you said, I'm with Alabama Power Company and serving as their quality coordinator, but my degree is in environmental engineering. But we'll get more into that here in just a second. So I want to go through and give you guys a little background and then talk about the actual transition and the changes that were required due to that, and then talk about how Qualtrax played into that, how we were assessed, and then any questions at the end. So first off, about me, I have 3 kids, 5, 2, and 2. Yes, they're twins, and yes, they are a handful. And then I went to Huntington College. That's the H with the hawk through it. That's in Montgomery, Alabama. That's where I got my undergraduate degree. Got my master's from Auburn University. I know there's at least one Bama fan in here, but hey, and I told people earlier at the conference, I like Virginia Tech right now better than I do Virginia. That's a reference to the basketball tournament that we recently played. But and again, I've been with Alabama Power now about 8 years. I will say quality is not my background or not my area of expertise. I'm getting there, hopefully. But as I said, I started out in engineering. So a little bit about us. First, I guess you all know what ISO 17025 is? Yes, no? So yeah, so one of the reasons we wanted to pursue that was, just as they say on their website, is to demonstrate that we are competent and able to generate valid results. So that's what we wanted. The area I'm in, and I'll go into that in just a minute, deals a lot with the regulatory side of things too. So to be able to say that these are valid numbers, that's important. So, but Alabama Power, you're a power company, right? You generate electricity, right? Why do we need ISO 17025? Well, the answer is I'm a member of Environmental Affairs in our Lab and Field Services. And so this comes straight from our purpose and our mission, which is to ensure both compliance and asset protection, basically by providing accurate and defensible data. So in order to do that, on the lab side, our lab got accredited in 2014, I believe it was. And then the field group followed suit, our sampling side of things, and got accredited in 2016. So just a little bit about us. Who are we and what do we do? Thanks to Mark for being a great model. He's in the front here if you want autographs later. But we have biologists, we have chemists, we have engineers, and we have environmental specialists. And we actually have, so we have several groups. We do air quality testing and monitoring. We have NPDES sampling group, so water sampling, that includes the NPDES, the groundwater. And then there's a compliance studies group that I'm a part of that does like studies on how we're going to meet compliance regulations. And then we also have a data management and analysis team, so it's electronic and data services. And we have one member here from that group, and they help us anything to do with data or forms or IT even, so lots of help there. And then again, my group does environmental studies, and we do also do some reporting from that environmental or electronic data service group as well. And then on the lab side, we have a water chemistry lab. We do transformable oils, and we do fuels. And don't ask me to tell you about any of that because I don't know a ton about any of the lab side of stuff. But I wish Debbie were here. She's our quality coordinator in the lab. She could answer any questions you may have there. But moving on. So I told you the GTL was accredited back in 2014 through the state of Florida. And they follow the NELAP standards, and then the field group followed suit with the sampling with through A2LA with the ISO 17025. Started with the 2005 and then went to 2017, and then also the NEFAP, which we all shortened to FSMO, which is a Field Sampling and Measurement Organization. So, like I said, we started in August. So a little bit about our background as a FSMO. We call ourselves the Water Field Group. That's where the WFG comes from. We got accredited in August 2016. Since then we've had, or as part of that, we've had 2 full external assessments, 1 surveillance assessment, and thanks to a lot of hard work from a lot of different people, not necessarily me initially, but I've since moved into that role. We've gone through all of those audits with 2 minor deficiencies or nonconformances. So that's cool. And so our field group, we collect about 3,500 plus FSMO samples, or samples that are collected under our accreditation. And then we also get about 12,000. It can be as many. I think we're on track right now to be above 15,000 for this year, just on track. And that's the field measurement. So that's your pH, your conductivity, ORP, DO, temperature. And then on the collection wise, it's surface water, we do groundwater, we can do composite or grabs. So all that stuff's covered under our scope. So if you want to know any more about the lab side or the field side, just see me afterwards and I can tell you. So one of the things I included this is we started last year with kind of a marketing push. So we are a fully accredited lab that can run samples, and then if you need collection, preferably in the state of Alabama, but we have been known to travel, we can also collect those as well. So like I said, if that's something you might be interested in, just let me know afterwards. So we found out, we got to looking at our schedule. A2LA published their way of how they were going to implement the new ISO standard, and we determined that because of our expiration date that our essentially next audit or assessment would be under the new 2017. So I think I started in like June. We were looking at an assessment in October, and some of the things that are different, you've seen, if you've been in any of the presentations earlier, hopefully you have. They had a good one on risk, and I know the keynote this morning was about risk, so that was one of the big changes. They also added some sampling requirements, dealing with how you label samples, and I'm just hitting on a few key things that I thought were kind of some of the big ones for us. Added some parts to the confidentiality work, and that deals with impartiality and conflict of interest, that sort of stuff. And then also changed a little bit how the management reviews work and the focus on continuous improvement. So I feel like it wasn't a terribly huge change, but there were some bigger parts of that I know, as I lost the guy's name, but the keynote this morning said, kind of some sticker shock almost when you see some of the risk-based thinking and that sort of thing. So luckily we have a consultant that we use to help us through that. So one of the first things we did was I took A2LA's reference checklist, which thankfully had the 2017 standard along with the 2005 location. So you could go back and kind of see where it was in the old standard and how they put it in the new. And then also they listed new stuff as such, so you kind of knew if it was a new item or if it was new but it related to certain things. Like there was reference checklist that they had. So I was able to sit down both with Debbie, who is our, like I said, quality coordinator. She did our internal audits. Able to sit down with her and go line by line through that checklist and basically say, here's where we have it now, or here's something new that we've got to get. And then also follow that up with a line by line checklist with our consultant. And so what I was able to do was take that information and create really just a list of what all had to be changed or needed to be done. And so I put the sheet up there just so you can see the colors, but I'm not really expecting you to read any of that because that's tiny. But you can see the different things, and I kind of grouped it, similar items with similar colors, so that's how that worked. But it ended up being a pretty extensive list, so they had over 50 different individual like revisions or additions or edits that we had to make. That touched 12 of our 34 SOPs, which is about 35%, and then I used 9 preventive action reports to complete those things, and each of those had multiple line items where one person might have to take a document and edit it. Another person may need to come back and review to make sure they did touch and correct it exactly the right way. And then of course obviously the risk register, or a way to track your risk and establish, like the guy said this morning, levels and ways you mitigate that risk, right? So Before I go into the Qualtrax things, how many in here do field sampling or are ISO 17025 accredited? So good. So a big number of you. That's good. How many of those have been audited to the new standard already? So not very many. So yeah, like I said, one of the things I recommend is just taking that checklist. If you're not accredited through A2LA, I'm assuming the other accreditors will have a similar document. And just, if not, go straight to the standard. But really go line by line. I think that was one of the biggest things that helped. So how did Qualtrax help? I'm going to talk about several different things, but we used the preventive action report that was already written before I took over the program, and through that was able to establish the responsibilities and who was going to handle that, and then also set deadlines for those tasks to be completed. And then one of the other things I like about that was it had the management interface, so they could see, they had opportunities to interact, whether that was up to the supervisor or manager level, or if that was like a team leader level. You had that interaction built in to that. And then of course at the end you got the QA review, which allowed me to go back and look at what was done, look at what was needed, and make sure they lined up. And so that was one of the things I really liked. And that's kind of our steps there. And I also put it here, which is kind of like your quality coordinator or whoever would initiate the preventive action, and then list or assign all the action items. And then management would take a look at that, like I said, depending on whether that was the team leader or a supervisor, how far it needed to go up. But they would look at that and they had the opportunity to say, no, I think we need to do more than that, or that's too far. Is that what we have to do, or is that what we, they could adjust it if needed. And then it would be submitted to the various people to complete those items, and then after the items were complete, they would submit that for a final review, which then again goes back to the management, so that the management can say, okay, so we've done all these things, check, 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 and they can look at it. If they're okay with it, then it comes back to the quality coordinator for a final review. If not, they can send it back to the corrective, a preventive action step where those folks can go back and modify or make changes to what they did or need to do. And then after that, after I reviewed it as a quality coordinator and made sure that all of our objectives were met, then I would close out that preventive action. So, and this is just a sample. It's tiny, I know. I tried to put one with several steps on it, but you can see the actionee, so who's responsible, and then what actions they were assigned, what due date, and then what they did and when they did it. And there's some more stuff that we keep track of out here to the side. I didn't put that in there, but I think it really helped us walk through. And like one of them says, ISO added 7.10.2, see below, and I put that in there. And it said also need to add record keeping requirement, which for CARs is done in Qualtrax. And so CWiki went into the document, completed it as assigned, and said as much. So, all right, the next thing, again, I didn't know what all Qualtrax was going to be presenting on. I mean, to some extent I did, but it's pretty cool that they've kind of went over, to some degree, corrective actions, which is similar to preventive actions, and then they've document control is another. But having the capability to track those revisions and those edits and the changes that were made, it was one of the things that helped us as we moved through that process. And then you could also at that point have multiple editors or reviewers and approvers, which was a really neat thing. So we set up a kind of like a review team, and then the team would get the document to where they thought it needed to be, and then would submit it to a set of reviewers, and the reviewers would again then kind of look at it, and then for final approval it would go through to management. So, and then this is just more along that. And again, I think Tim and whoever else is, I've been in the advanced class with Tim, but whoever's been teaching others, I'm sure they've done a great job kind of going over what all the document control options are, but it gives you just the history and different revision numbers and information that you need there. All right, so next one's testing and training. And again, I just was in Tim's class on testing and training, which was really good. But Again, you have the ability to assign tests with a deadline. I think that's standardly set, and then you can also have multiple testing options where you can ask different questions and how you. I think we've seen the acknowledgement test, we've seen actual questions laid out, and new to me, but Tim showed us earlier how you can use the training to actually do short answer and kind of send it out and then get a response back and then quote unquote grade it, which is kind of neat. I didn't know that could be done, so that was cool. And then that's just an example of what our page. We haven't updated yet to the new version of Qualtrax, so you still get the old look there. But yeah. And then again, as the SOPs are updated, we were able to send out tests and make sure and have a record that all of our team has looked at that and been updated on the changes. Again, you get the option to user control your answers. When we first started, Mr. Siwicki, who you saw earlier, he was the quality coordinator at the time, and he would have silly answers in there from time to time. So it'd be like the red frog jumped over the blue ox, and you'd be like, well, that's not really it. But the other three would be, okay, well, you don't really know. So you'd have to really read and actually have to go look up in the document if you weren't sure. But you can have fun with it and ask different types of questions. But and then the other thing, again, you got the completion dates, and to segue into the next one, you can pull up reports on the progress. So you can actually pull up and see who's completed the test, who's passed it, who's still waiting to pass it. And I think I heard somebody say earlier, gently nudge those people or their management to get that completed. So, and that was, again, goes right into the next one, which I was going to talk about, which is, again, reports. So I could pull up and look at progress tracking on the preventive actions. I can look at the tracking on the test. And again, I think a big thing is accountability, because it gives you that report to be able to say, hey, I'm still missing this. And you have something tangible that you can hand your management, and they can take and go get it completed. And so this is an example. I guess most of you are probably users, so you've seen this plenty of times, but this just gives you a list of your PARs and any information that you want to add in there to it, essentially. And then again, this is the testing version of that, where you can see who the person is, what test they took, and when it was assigned. And again, it goes on out with when it was completed and all that information that you can add in there. So it's really good, and you can narrow it down various ways depending on how you set up your report designer. That's really neat. So after all of that work, we went into our, well, I guess it was our regularly scheduled assessment. It's just we had to meet the new standard, so it's kind of like a transition assessment. But we were successful in maintaining our accreditation. We did have one minor deficiency, which was not even related to the new standard. So, but I feel like Qualtrax streamlined the preparation and the transition to the new, and getting everything updated to that level, and getting us prepared for that assessment. So, and like I said, I don't go into CARs at all, but again, workflows with the CARs. One of the things I wanted to do when I was here was rewrite mine, which I've been working on already. But and then we were able to, through all that and through all the preparation, we were able to complete the CAR that we did have from the assessment in less than 30 days, and it was approved. So it's cool. And then, so really in summary, like I said, you really want to slow down, make sure you just read and review as careful as you can. And like I said, I would really go line by line through the standard and find where your information that's required is, and what document it's in, what paragraph if you can, so that you know, number one, but then number two, that you can easily provide that to the assessor and they can go right to it. And then if there are changes that need to be made, easy way to track that is to create a checklist or some sort of list of things that need to be done. And then once you have the list, then you can transfer that into a PAR workflow in Qualtrax to track all that. Actually, what I did mine in Excel to start with, and then I narrowed it down, I think it was 13 or 14 what I thought would be PARs, and then ultimately I only had 9 because I took several of those and said, well, these are kind of all minor document changes, let's roll that into one PAR, and that's what gives you the flexibility to do that. So I think Qualtrax can be a great help using that preventive action workflow if you have it, using the testing and training, using the reports to keep track of your progress and keep that accountability. And so take advantage of that and the flexibility it provides, and I think you'll do all right. So.